Namaste, welcome to Shuddha Vidya, a sacred space for mentoring, Jyotish, and meditation. This is part of a series on Sri Dakshinamurti. So, if you are a beginner watching this video first, I urge you to first go and watch my introductory video where I'm expounding on the profound significance of Sri Dakshinamurti's form. So, this is going to be dedicated to the second Dhyāna Shloka. So I'll chant the Dhyana Shloka in Sanskrit and follow it up with an English interpretation. वटविटपि समीपे भूमिभागे निषण्णम् सकलजनानां ज्ञानदातारमारात् त्रिभुवनगुरुम् ईशम् दक्षिणामूर्तिदेवम् जननमरणदुःखच्छेददक्षं नमामि. Another very beautiful Sanskrit verse. Vata vitapi samipe bhumi bhage nishannam. He is seated, or he is portrayed as being seated close to the roots of a vata vriksha, a giant banyan tree. Bhumi bhage nishannam. So at the roots of the banyan tree, on earth, on the floor, close to the roots, he is seated, sort of reclining on the tree. Now, this has two interpretations. One is it probably just, because he is the guru, and in ancient India, in Gurukulas, there were typically these giant trees, banyan trees or peepal trees, ashwatha trees. And the gurus typically sat under those trees close to the roots, surrounded by their students. It is a simple portrayal of Dakshinamurti as the guru, but there is a deeper meaning as to why that banyan tree and what it shows. I have expounded on that in my video on what is the deeper esoteric significance of the different elements in the form of Sri Dakshinamurti. So kindly watch that video. So Vatavitapi Samipe Bhumi Bhage Nishannam. He's seated on the floor close to the roots of the banyan tree. Sakala Jananam Jnanadataram Arat. And he is the one who imparts wisdom to all people, to all human beings, to everyone. So this wisdom is very different. This is not instructional wisdom. This is not, this is not something where the teacher says, do this, don't do this. This is not spoon-fed wisdom. This is wisdom as silent illumination. That is Dakshinamurti's wisdom. He doesn't speak a word. Mauna Vyakya Prakatita Parabrahma Tattvam. He expounds the subtlest of concepts in profound silence. So Sakala Jananam Jnana Dataram. He gives jnana not as words, not as instructions that you can copy down, but he just illuminates your inner world. He illuminates your life through his silence. He illuminates your mind through his silence. And in that silence, like spotlights turning on in a stadium, you see all the activities of your mind, of your insecure ego self and everything so clearly that you will no longer remain stuck in them, because you see it through and through. You see all the cunning tendencies of the mind with utter clarity, and therefore the mind cannot deceive you anymore. That is what it means by Sakala Jananam Jnana Dataram. When you tune into that profound silence, into that profound illumination, you come upon a very different source of wisdom, a very different source of insight and understanding that is not instructional, but insightful. So Sakala Jananam Jnana Dataram Arat. Tribhuvana Gurum Isham Dakshinamurti Devam. Tribhuvana Gurum. He is the guru of all the three worlds. Now, the three worlds expression, needs some contextualization. In a very normal sense, Sanatana Dharma understands that there are many different worlds, lokas. The lokas where the lower beings, asuras who are not evolved, they live, patala lokas, and the world of mortals, bhuloka, and sargaloka, the divine beings live there. That is a very common man's interpretation. But we are here for deeper understanding. So these lokas are not like, we should not just limit ourselves to the understanding that they are like some worlds, some places, locations where people live. These lokas are different planes of consciousness. So think of it more like when you study a subject, you can develop different levels of understanding. When you study mathematics in primary school, there is a certain level of understanding. When you come to middle school and high school, there is a certain level of understanding. And should you choose to pursue higher level mathematics and do research in it, there is an entirely different level of understanding. So this could be seen as a model, a portrayal of what lokas are. You are developing more rarefied understanding, more expanded understanding. You are basically moving through your own consciousness, through your own mind at different planes. So these lokas are that. And there are different models. Some say there are 21 lokas, so 21 planes of consciousness. Some say there are 14, some say there are 7, but typically they're spoken of as Tribhuvana, 3 levels. One level is very basic, extremely, within our brains also, you have the reptilian brain, which is very insecure and only survival driven, only food and sex and reproduction and survival operate at that level. Then there is another level where you have the mammalian brain and everything, where some level of thinking and understanding is possible, but again emotions and fight or flight reactions and all those take over. And then you have the higher brain, the neocortex, the most advanced form, where higher order thinking and profound thinking, appreciation of art and the finer dimensions of life are possible. This is like Tribhuvana, 3 lokas. Within you, these 3 lokas exist. There's something which is very basic, there is something somewhat mediocre, and there is something which is profound. And the 3 lokas can be seen as this. You live in all these 3 dimensions. There are times in your life when you're, only after survival, living a very basic life. There are times in your life where you're somewhat mediocre. You're willing to do some help to others. You're willing to make a difference, provided your personal desires are met. And then there are some times where you're unconditionally kind, where you're helpful, where you're wise, and you're connected, you're expanded in your understanding. So Tribhuvana. And in all these 3 lokas, he is the guru. He illuminates all these 3 planes of your existence. He makes you see all these different planes of your existence. The other way in which Tribhuvana could be seen is the 3 states of wakefulness, dream state, and sleep state. Right? So you go through these 3 states. In all these three states, the Atma continues to illuminate. It is apart from all these three. That is why it is Turiya, the fourth one, which is untouched by these three states. And Tribhuvana could also be seen as the phases of life: childhood, youth or adulthood, and old age. In all these three phases, Dakshinamurti's wisdom, his illuminatory insight operates. We need his illumination, we need his insight, his blessings in all these three phases. Tribhuvana could also be seen as the three dimensions of time: past, present, and future. In all these three dimensions of time, he is beyond this, he is beyond all three. But his wisdom, his illumination operates at all these three levels. So Tribhuvana Gurum, he is the guru of all three dimensions. The word Tribhuvana should be understood at many different levels. Tribhuvana Gurum Isham. Isham means the supreme immanent inner controller. He does not control or manipulate, not like he gives orders, you do this, you do that. Think of it more like, when a magnetic field is operating, ion filings automatically arrange themselves in neat patterns. It's not like the magnet is telling the ion filings, no, you stand there, no, you come closer. No. The field itself has that intelligence. It naturally brings that arrangement. Some of you may have watched these beautiful videos on YouTube or on social media, Cymatics, how sound actually arranges sand patterns into very beautiful symmetric mandala-like patterns, sand particles. So they sprinkle sand particles on a board, and when they introduce very coherent harmonic sound frequencies, 528 hertz and such things, those sand particles beautifully arrange themselves in square mandalas, circle mandalas. So that is Isham, the supreme immanent inner controller. He does not control through authority, but because he is so intelligent, his very presence brings about order, brings about harmony, and it makes things move in a certain way, in synchrony with the divine will, with the higher order of life. So Tribhuvana Gurum Isham, Dakshinamurti Devam, the divine Dakshinamurti. Janana Marana Dukkha Cheda Daksham. Janana Marana, birth and death, Dukkha Chedam. So, when we remain stuck within these polarities of birth and death, it is inevitably associated with sorrow. Now, this is a very subtle concept that we all have to meditate upon and come upon, because this will not be immediately evident. I think human beings have a very high tolerance for sorrow before they actually even begin to wake up to the reality that I'm in sorrow. Only if things seriously go wrong, or if people lose their money, or people lose their loved ones, then they wake up to the reality that they're in sorrow. But for the truly, spiritually conscious ones, life need not give them such heavy beatings to realize that sorrow is there. The very process of existence, having to fight for your survival, having to worry about your future, having to plan for your future, revisiting your past and ruminating over events there, holding on to pleasurable events and worrying if these pleasurable events will continue, uh, ruminating over painful events and worrying that these painful events should not repeat. These are all daily happenings. So Janana Marana is inevitably casting a shadow of sorrow. It's inevitable. So all human beings do have this. So Janana Marana Dukkha, Janana Marana, the process of birth and death, is inevitably associated with an element of sorrow in lesser or greater amounts, but that sorrow is ever present in the background. And the sooner we wake up to it, we will try to find a way to address it. Janana Marana Dukkha Chedam. He is the one who cuts through that sorrow, who destroys that sorrow. who dissolves that sorrow. Janana Marana Dukkha Cheda Daksham. Dakshata, meaning capacity, skillfulness, ability. So he has the ability, the capacity, the skillfulness to cut through Janana Marana Dukkha. His silent, illuminating presence is such that it can cut through lifetimes of Janana Marana Dukkha. Now, the word Dakshinamurti itself needs some reinterpretation at this stage. Dakshinamurti, Dakshina is literally seen as south, and therefore he is portrayed as sitting, facing south. His sannidhis in temples are often placed in a way that he sits facing south. And we need to understand why. Because in Sanatana Dharma, south is the direction of darkness, of death. And therefore, Dakshinamurti, the eternal, undying Atma, is sitting in Swatmarama, in great repose, in his true nature, smiling away at the direction of death. He's basically smiling away at Yama, at death, saying, "What can you do to me? Can you touch me?" So that is one meaning of why he is Dakshinamurti. He sits facing south. He is laughing away at the idea of death, which scares most human beings. The other meaning is Dakshata. He is endowed with the profound ability, the profound skill, the profound capacity to cut through all ignorance. Hence Dakshinamurti. He is the very embodiment of skillfulness, of capacity. Let's not limit skillfulness to whether he can sing or he can dance or he has all knowledge. No, not in that superficial sense. Of all the things in life, the most complex thing, the most subtle thing is the ability to cut through the illusions created by the mind, by the limited ego self in us. And that requires the highest level of skill and capacity. It requires the greatest amount of precision and understanding. And Dakshinamurti is that. He is that embodiment who can cut through what we call Moola Avidya, the root ignorance, that we are separate beings, that we are limited beings, conditioned by limitations of birth and death. He cuts through that illusion. Hence he is Dakshinamurti, Dakshata. So Janana Marana Dukkha Cheda Daksham Namami. I bow down to that Dakshinamurti who fully has the skill to cut through lifetimes of the sorrow of birth and death. So that brings us to the end of the second Dhyāna Shloka, Dakshinamurti. If you like this video and if this has brought you some new insights, kindly follow my YouTube page, follow me on Instagram, and you're also welcome to write to me your questions. I'm happy to interact and answer your questions. So thank you and see you in the next video on the third Dhyāna Shloka of Sri Dakshinamurti. Namaste.